Hi, this is John Blyler. Tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Guru Madhavan, who is a biomedical engineer and also the Senior Policy Advisor for the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine.
The essence of science is discovery. It's to understand the world around us. And the core of engineering is creation. It's as I mentioned, designing under constraints, and sometimes engineering design cannot wait until science figures out how the world works, and we often have to design systems in advance, proactively, even reactively oftentimes, based on the pressures of the society. And that's something very, very important, because oftentimes people misunderstand the fact, or there's a misconception that science leads to engineering. That is not the case. Engineering has proceeded in many eminent ways, giving rise to new forms of science and scientific practices. The most famous example being, the creation of steam engine led to the entire science of thermodynamics, and because the focus was getting the engine working. Same way with airplanes. They flew long before we had formal studies of aeronautics and avionics and other systems. And now we are living in a society where you have engineered systems in a really funky way. Social media is creating new forms of sociological research. We are trying to understand the world we are living in as a consequence of the technologies that we are using. So that's an important distinction between science and engineering.
So, as an engineer, you, as a biomedical engineer, you somehow wandered into the area of policy and economics and whatnot. How did that happen? And
I was born in India, grew up there, and the way I like to think about it is getting into engineering was like an arranged marriage, because that's what you you do. Because I was put into this track, and you studied physics, chemistry, math, and you were considered a social success if you went into engineering or medicine. So I pursued the path of engineering. Even within engineering, I selected a deeply technical specialty, looking at instrumentation and control systems, which focused on all the elements that we are now surrounded with: sensors, transducers, and lots of instruments. Exactly, and more importantly, how they are connected. So you had to specialize in pretty much everything to understand how a single sensor works. So you had to understand mechanics, civil, and all sorts of things. But then over time, as with my own personal evolution, as I had developed medical devices for cardiac arrhythmias, I've worked on technologies to improve lower limb blood circulation and so forth. But then as my worldview got better or got enriched because of the studies that I took on my own, or thanks to my education, I felt like I needed to get into the realm of economic policy. It was an accident, and I think the whole thing makes me think that I used to be a freshwater engineer and developing technologies, and accidentally became a saltwater engineer, where you have to deal with policy systems, where you have to deal with value systems. And in the traditional engineering design, I just had to meet the specs. But here, the specs are very different. The human values are just completely different, and that's more important in the world of health, because it's so individual, it is so personal. Yet, as a collective, it affects economies, it affects sociologies, and we are still trying to figure out our individual neurologies here, because that's one of the biggest unknowns. And how do you bring all these together is the challenge in public policy. So I do sometimes feel very lonely as an engineer in the world of public policy, where there are a lot of arguments and perspectives, but then I come with the discipline of producing stuff that works. So you can keep arguing for the sake of arguments, but ultimately you have to produce solutions that are safe, reliable, and affect people at large.